So she's a Pluto and Sag kid. And theoretically, like, this is what her chart looks like. Right there. And who knows, maybe somebody kind of, I'd have to go back and check, but this is the time that they were using on Astro.com. So she's a Pisces right here. And she has Sun in Pisces, Mercury in Pisces. Make this a little bit bigger for you to see, for me to see too. So she has Sun in Pisces, Venus in Pisces, Mercury in Pisces. Not uncommon. In a chart, you'll see Sun, Mercury close to each other, Sun, Venus generally close to each other. So that's pretty normal. Got a 3-degree orb between Mercury and the Sun. A little tight, a little close. When it gets really close in those orbs, you know, sometimes it can be difficult working out the conjunction. So there can be some confusion there. And I think there was some confusion there with Simone Biles. We'll talk about that. Venus Sun conjunction, 5 degrees. I think it's great in a lot of ways. And I'm going to break her chart down into kind of like quadrants here. So the first quadrant that I'm going to look at is this quadrant, starting with Saturn. So she's got Saturn in Aries. That's a hard placement. In general, I think it's hard for women, but it's a hard placement in general. So she has Saturn in Aries. And best case scenario, Saturn in Aries, is you can be really, really disciplined. And you can kind of master the body with Saturn in Aries. There you go. Good. That's a good kind of way for her to work with Saturn, because she became this, you know, incredible gymnast, right? Discipline, perfection of performance, which Aries can be engaged with, right? Without having to think a lot. When you think with Aries, then you're in trouble. We're going to talk about that. And then she's got this, you know, trine with Pluto, which is great, right? Saturn Pluto trine impacting popular culture through Pluto in Sagittarius. It's retrograde. She's Pluto retrograde. And to me, this is where she gets into trouble with Japan, because Sagittarius represents foreign countries. So theoretically, she would be better at what she does closer to home. She's got Moon in Gemini, which tends to be more local. You know, at the very least, you know, her state, or you know, her region, and even her country, her home country, because here's Pluto on the other side. She's got this Pluto Moon opposition, and that's a very intense opposition, right? Very, very intense. And we just talked about Moon in Gemini. She's got Moon in Gemini. And she has this in conjunct with Chiron, and that's Chiron at 1 Scorpio. So what's interesting is that the discussion has been about mental health with her. I would say that for Simone Biles, the discussion should be about emotional health. And I know that it's easy to have like a discussion about mental health with Moon in Gemini, because I just talked about how Moon in Gemini has to talk about how they feel, right? But with the in conjunct with Chiron, which is in Scorpio, and dealing with compulsions, right? I think Chiron in Scorpio can be very compulsive. To me, Chiron in Scorpio can be, it's kind of along the lines of dealing with a deep psychological wound and having to get to the bottom of that wound in order to clean it out and transform it. And look, her Chiron is at 1 degree, right? In astrology, when you work with Chiron, the Chironic crisis is around the degree of Chiron. So, you know, what are you dealing with here? You're dealing with something that's very pre-verbal. Very, very pre-verbal. So her Chiron has a lot to do with her conception and has a lot to do with her birth. It's right there. And it's retrograde, which is kind of like, get me back in the fucking womb, right? That's Chiron in Scorpio, retrograde, it's moving backwards. So really the key for Simone Biles and her, like she wanted to unlock the key, which is Chiron to her life. She'd want to go through some type of hypnosis or some type of hypnotherapy so she could actually go back to a pre-verbal time. And she's not going to work this out analytically. She's just not going to work it out analytically. Whatever she went through. And there's a lot of things that we could talk about and discuss. We could talk about the enabling and all the things that made it easier for her to kind of throw in the towel. But there are deeper astrological issues here in her life that are getting played out in a very social kind of way. So she's got this in conjunct with the moon, and she's got black moon Lilith right here. Like that's transiting her moon. Wow. So that's at, where is it? Yeah, that's at 1 Gemini. Oh, look who's here. Are you going to join us tonight? Speaking of black moon Lilith. Well, come on up here. You got to come up here. Come up here. Right on cue, black moon Lilith. Come on. Well, get up here. You come up here. Come on. We have a Rosie sighting tonight. Here she is. She said, black moon Lilith, let me get in on this. Let me get on this shit. Anyway, black moon Lilith is approaching her moon. That can be problematic. I mean, now the gymnastic stuff is done, right? It's all done. She didn't do anything. I think the hardest thing for her is going to be coming back home. And I don't think she's going to stay there for the Olympics. I don't think she's going to ride it out. If you were really successful and it was a great Olympics, boy, you'd stay there to the end, right? You'd go out, you'd have fun, the Olympic Village would be rocking, you'd be a star, you wouldn't want to leave. I think the problems for her are really going to happen when she comes back home and that black moon Lilith kicks in. Yeah, that's what I think. So let's go back to this quadrant. It all starts off with Saturn, structure, order, discipline, perfecting the body, right? And then here comes that south node. South node in Pisces and conjunct Mercury. To me, already, that's problematic. Now, she has an opposition with Mercury and Mars in her chart. And that's on-off, right? That's on-off. It's like Mercury and Pisces will have to go through and process a bunch of stuff, and then Mars will kick in. Right? That's how that thing works. And by the way, she's got a really interesting grand trine. She's got Mars in Libra. What do we have here? We got a trine with, what's that, Rosie? Where's that trine? Trine with Uranus and trine with Neptune, right? Trine with Uranus and trine with Neptune, right there. Boom. I'm sorry, Mars in Virgo. My bad. 27, not Libra. I saw Libra up there. So yeah. So Mars trine Uranus, Mars trine Neptune. She's got Uranus in Aquarius, and even with the moon, mathematically and trine. It's a really interesting grand trine, right? So being able to put emotion like into her action, which is Mars, and can be creative and innovative with the Uranus trine, with the Neptune trine to Mars, very creative, super creative. But she has now, and I think to some extent, like she has to be right. Like for her to actually do her thing, she's got to be right because she's dealing with this afflicted Mercury. And Mercury is afflicted in Pisces, by the way, and it's conjunct the South Node. And she's here to be kind of more action-oriented, more instinctual with Mars, right? Mars is not about thinking. Even if it's in Virgo, it's not really about thinking. It's about, being engaged in physicality. And in Virgo, it's very fast. So overthinking and bringing this kind of, Neptunian, mercurial thing into the mix could be terrible for her. Terrible. And she's been going through a personality crisis. She's going through a fucking personality crisis. She's got Neptune conjuncting her sun. The thing with the Neptune sun conjunction is that sometimes you can be just completely like convinced that you're God, right? With a Neptune sun conjunction. I mean, it can really go that high. You can feel like, oh, I'm impervious. I'm a divine being. And who knows, maybe you could tap into something like that. But also with the Neptune sun conjunction, it can take you down to the bottom of things. Because, of course, Neptune's dual. And it can be very hard for people with Neptune sun conjunctions. And especially when you bring this Mars opposition into the mix. Like, astrologically, she's fucked up right now. She just is. This kind of gets back into Richard Sherman territory. And it's interesting that nobody's talking about Richard Sherman in mental health. Even though the guy clearly had a massive breakdown. I'm not sure she had. And the thing about Pisces, though, it can also be very related to the path of least resistance. That's the other thing with Pisces, right? Water finds its own level. So if she's getting a lot of like feedback from the press or from her coach or from people that are supporting Naomi Osaka and this whole mental health thing, like Pisces could just go there, right? Say, fuck, man, I'm going to go into this mental health thing. And I'm just going to, and I'm going to justify why I'm doing this. Well, I have my medals. And, I'm good. You girls go get your medals. And with mutable signs, a lot of that justification can happen. But she starts off with Saturn here, and there she gets into this weird Mercury conjunction with the South Node, right? So there's something about the South Node there that she's got to figure out. Like she's got to be able to kind of, move through and muddy through those periods where she can become more Virgo-esque, more Mars. That's the thing here, right? And when she does that, guess what happens? The Grand Trine kicks in and she's good as gold. Literally and figuratively, she's good as gold. But because Neptune was here, it's harder. It's just harder for her to do that. She's gonna go to the path of least resistance, and she's having a personality crisis. And she's got some other stuff going on, right? Chiron conjuncting Saturn. That's hard. That's a hard conjunction because you feel vulnerable. And here's the thing too. And by the way, I'm not necessarily giving her a break because I feel like in a lot of ways she kind of succumbed to the current political climate in theater. And maybe it has to do with her programming and this astrological, just kind of, hey man, I'm just going to go with the flow. And that girl over there is getting some love for sitting out. So I'm just going to do the same thing, whether it's conscious or unconscious. I think that's what's happening here. But the other thing too is that, and she said this, and I think that there's some truth and merit to this. The Olympics were supposed to be last year. And she trained for those Olympics to happen last year. And if you're an athlete, and especially if you have Saturn in Aries and you are into the training and the conditioning and the discipline, and it gets pulled out from under you, like the cycle is weird, right? Now you've got this year, you don't know if the Olympics are going to happen. And if you're a creature of habit, and athletes are really a creature of habit, and your routine gets disrupted, your life gets disrupted, your psyche gets disrupted. And when that happens, you could lose confidence. And I think that she was actually afraid that something could happen to her. I think that it's true with a Chiron Saturn conjunction, Saturn ruling things like the skeletal structure, the spine, Aries is the neck and the head, and Chiron conjuncting her Saturn. I think she was kind of tapped into that. I also think she found the path of least resistance. I also think she's having a fucking personality crisis, right? She's got this Mars Neptune opposition, which is making her feel less kind of sure of herself. You know, it's like opposing Mars. Can I do this? Can I do this? Right? Neptune brings in big doubt, and it's interesting, right? Because what she went through, in a lot of ways, is what we're going to be going through with this Neptune Mars opposition. Very interesting, but we're not Pisces, right? The collective is not Piscean, even though Neptune technically is, right? She had Mars kind of around Black Moon Lilith in her chart. She's got Black Moon Lilith in Leo, which has to do with performing. So I have this other theory about Simone Biles and gymnasts in general. I think they're really weird. And Emily and I are going to talk about this week. We're going to mash. I think the whole idea of gymnastics is really weird. And the reason why I think it's weird is because these girls, they start off as these little pixies and their bodies are flexible. And if they fall, they're less prone to injury when they fall because they're young. Your bones are, you're just more flexible, softer, et cetera, right? And they're not developed. They don't have a lot of, you know, chest or bust, which throws the center of gravity things off. And the promotion of them staying young is, if you're really good, it's part of the sport, right? They want to keep you, you know, 5'2" forever. You know, they want to keep you 5'2" and flat chested forever, so you can maximize your talent for 1, 2, 3 Olympics. And so by the time you get to her age, and she's 24, like, you're ready to, you've kind of moved on in some ways, you know, like at 24, she is not a young girl in the sport. She's just not. And at 24, I mean, theoretically, if you're looking at the cycle of life and everything, you know, she's again, I'm just using theoretical. She should be a mother, right? Mother, married, kids. She's on that path. But there she is. She's 24 years old, competing in a sport where, you know, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, big difference, huge difference, 7-year Saturn cycle difference. And I think she, on some level, also realized that that was not her. Like, she wasn't that pixie anymore. But she doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know who she is. And part of it is this Neptune conjunction with Pisces, with her sun in Pisces. This is a person in crisis. I can tell you that right now. And did she just kind of go with the flow because she knew that she would get some kind of love and support because the track record and the path was already there for her? Absolutely. I think that's what she did. But I also feel like she knew she wasn't right. Her routine was disrupted. So what can we learn from Simone Biles with this whole thing? Honestly, she should never have been there. She should never have been there. But because, again, if this is true, she has Pluto in her ascendant, right? She's going to be, you know, going through this intensity. You know, people have counted on her. She's got Mars in the 10th house, noted for her athletic ability, part of fortune up there, right? People are banking on her. She's got Saturn in Aries, what she's always done. So it's hard in a lot of ways to get out of the routine and out of the pattern. But if I were her, I would not have gone. Period. End of story. Wouldn't have done it. Wouldn't have gone there. Just wouldn't have gone there. You know, she's got Pluto and Sag. We think her ascendant is in Sagittarius, and she has Saturn in Aries. Not a lot of fire. And people that don't have a lot of fire don't often stand up for themselves. They just don't, right? They're not fiery. They don't have that kind of, you know, warrior kind of energy. She's got a lot of air, Jupiter, Uranus. Let's see. Yeah, Jupiter Uranus conjunction, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. She's got Saturn, right, sitting on Jupiter. You know, I mean, the thing that allowed her to excel in a lot of ways. You know, Jupiter Uranus is creative, can be really athletic, and she's got Saturn sitting on Jupiter and moving into that conjunction with Uranus, Saturn retrograding. Yeah, I mean, I just don't think this was a good thing for her to go. Period. End of story. I mean, ideally, when Saturn was conjuncting Neptune in her chart, it'd be really interesting. Like, I would like to interview her or have somebody ask the question, like, where was her head at in like December of 2020? Because with Saturn was on Neptune in her chart, that would have been a really great moment for her to have a kind of that come to Jesus kind of moment and deal with these kind of Neptunian things like expectations and projection and all that. And she could have come to a decision then, I think, which would have been far better, and she would have avoided all this, but I don't think she can in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of it has to do with this Chiron in Scorpio, right? And ultimately, maybe what this is all about is getting to that deep, very deep wound, connected to just even being born, right? Okay. Now, what I also did is I relocated her chart, and I did it for, where is it? Okay, I did it for Tokyo to see kind of what was going on for her in Tokyo. See how different it is. It's pretty different. So in Tokyo, midheaven in Taurus, Moon in the 10th house. So again, like that, all her emotional baggage was on display for people to see. 10th house Moon in Gemini. And what's really interesting here is all of her Piscean planets showing up in the 8th house. That's not good. That is not a good placement for somebody who needs to be on stage or out in the public. And I've seen people who have 9th house suns and they relocate and their suns go into the 8th house and they disappear, right? They disappear. They're not the same people. They're dealing a lot more with internal psychological issues. And they have to like break through them with that relocation. This put her in a very different place, because remember, those planets, like, let's see, we had Sun, we were all over here, right? And they were all in like the 5th house. 5th house, which is, you know, activity. 5th house is Leo, you're on stage. You know, right there, boom. And here in the 8th house, she's hidden. She's totally hidden. And Mars goes into the 2nd house, which brings up a lot of, I think you're going to bring up insecurity, especially if you have this Neptune opposition right there. And then, you know, all those planets that she normally has in the 3rd house, they're in the 6th house where it's related to health. And I mean, this was not a good location for her Olympics wise, period, end of story. It's just not a good place for her. Yeah, Leo on the ascendant, she's getting attention, but she's getting the wrong kind of attention. Wrong kind of attention. It's a turning point in her life. Major turning point in her life. Major. And when she gets back home and that Black Moon Lilith hits her natal moon, I wouldn't say she should be on suicide watch, but I think she's going to be like really sensitive. And Neptune and Pisces is a sensitive sign. Isn't that right? Are you a Pisces? She's a Pisces. She's an Aries. Are you an Aries? What's your sign? It's thunder and lightning out here right now. All right, there you go. Simone Biles.